Hey everybody, Josh Sigurdson, World Alternative Media here, and the average person is finally starting to talk about the issue of inflation. Do they know what it means? I'm not sure, but it's good to see people start talking about it because it is one of the most important issues we face as a civilization right now. As this Zero Hedge article says, 77% of Americans are worried about soaring inflation. As many of you know, an insane amount of currency was printed in 2020 and 2021, and we're talking a fifth of all US dollars ever in circulation. Of course, it was in order to mitigate a problem the US government and world governments started and created in the first place, and it's going to perpetuate it. We'll go into that more later, as well as I'm going to go into some of my favorite crypto projects that are happening right now that I'm pretty excited about. We'll go into that a bit later too. There's a lot coming up on the horizon regarding gold and silver. Many things are happening as a result of this inflation. Make sure to check the links below this video for ways you can help support us and keep us up and running and where you can find us. Anyway, let's get into this article. As it says, Americans are becoming more worried about inflation than ever following the Federal Reserve and federal government's unprecedented response to the virus pandemic, quote unquote, downturn by blowing trillions of dollars into the economy. As a result, prices of financial assets and items in the real economy have soared over the last year, which a new survey reveals 3/4 of consumers are concerned about inflation. With Federal Reserve turning a blind eye to rapid price increases, consumers are finding it unavoidable to avoid higher prices at the gas pump or supermarket. A CivicScience survey of more than 2,600 respondents found that 77% were somewhat concerned about inflation. The fact that they're just somewhat is insane. The I'm not sure crowd was about 6%, as you can see below. Very concerned was 42%, somewhat concerned 35%, not at all concerned 17%, if we're going to break it down. The fact that there's 17% that are not concerned at all, was that like the real voting bloc for Joe Biden? I'm not sure. Anyway, continuing on here, it says much of the inflation concerns were based on the younger respondents. About 52% of respondents aged 18 to 24 were very concerned about inflation. 50% of the 25 to 34 age respondents were very concerned, and 48% of 35 to 54, surprisingly, baby boomers aged plus 55 were only at 37%. Well, boomers and millennials tend to be the most irresponsible of generations. I'm just speaking generally. I'm not speaking directly to any of you, because if you're watching this, obviously that isn't the case. But statistically, it seems to be the most coddled of the generations, unfortunately. And I'm one of the millennials. And it continues here. How concerned are you right now about inflation in the US? And we see the age breakdown below. Very interesting to see these studies come to light, considering for so many years, if you mentioned inflation to anyone, maybe 5% of people even knew what you're talking about. The rest, maybe someone feigned some interest. Most people would just call it boring, because money has always been considered boring because it's one of the most important things in your life. At the end of the day, if you understand money, you can control your money. If you don't understand your money at all, other people can control the money. And guess who's controlling it? The ones who print it. And the ones who print it are working alongside, as a private company, of course, as the Federal Reserve is, alongside with via legal tender laws with the US government, and their whole purpose is to make you more dependent and more enslaved. That is the purpose of government in general. As it continues, it says, meanwhile, Cleveland Fed President Charles Evans said some increase in inflation would be welcome. Too low inflation is no good, he added. Well, if we're talking about competitive nature in the fiat system, sure. But I mean, look at what's happening in Argentina. They've been through what, a dozen inflations in the last century, and now they're defaulting on their debt again after last year getting a bunch of money from the IMF. Imagine that. They're being crippled by the globalist entity that cripples all world economies by lending debt that they cannot pay back. But in the US, with the world reserve currency, the things that could occur if the US dollar were to collapse are unprecedented things that you cannot imagine today in this regular world that we have. I wouldn't call it regular, but coddled world that we've been living in for the last almost a century. But for the millions, as it says, of working poor Americans still collecting pandemic insurance checks, soaring prices have been much of a nuisance. And I quote, naturally, people who have had their hours of pay reduced as a result of the pandemic are the most sensitive to the idea of inflation and what it means for the general cost of living. It is difficult to make ends meet now. Imagine how difficult it could be once inflation sinks in, said CivicScience. Well, of course, it goes without saying, if we're going to talk about debt inequality, monetary inequality, any kind of inequality, it all stems from inflation. You can raise the minimum wage to $1,000 a month or $1,000 an hour. It won't change the fact that as you raise it, the price of living will go up more so, and you'll still end up just as broke. You'll have more money, but you'll be more broke. Does that make sense to you? I'm sure most of you, that makes sense to. But the average person, it doesn't. They just think if you have more zeros on a number, it means more. But the cost of living plays into that. And if you keep printing currency and you keep handing out currency and you keep funding these massive initiatives, you end up with less valuable money. And if we've seen a fifth of all currency printed in the last year, then we're going to see a good 20% dip in the value at some point. And of course, a lot of that's inflows into the stock market and into bonds, I should mention, which then goes into the stock market. National debt, $28.1 trillion right now, 28.1. Just over a year ago, we hit like 22. I mean, this is insanity. But of course, it doesn't surprise me that we continue printing, because at this point, what does a national debt even mean when you're at this level? Eventually, they'll hit 75 trillion. That 75 trillion will be the GDP of the entire world. And then who knows? Will the Chinese yuan replace it? Well, the Chinese yuan is heavily devalued too, but they are manipulating it in such a way with the amount of exports and imports that they do in China. We are talking big numbers. They're far more competitive, and the world order is shifting towards China. IMF wanted to base himself in Beijing many years ago, as we reported at the time. The US dollar is inevitably doomed. And there is no way around that. Eventually, what goes up must come down, and this will come down harder than anything we've ever seen throughout monetary history. A lot of people talk about stagflation. We are seeing potential deflationary events over the last year based on the money not actually reaching the actual people on the street. It is actually going mostly digitally into the markets, and we see this article from SOMAG News, $9 trillion story, 22% of the circulating USD printed in 2020. I mean, this is absolute insanity. But you know what? There are a lot of people, like we've seen in Venezuela, like we've seen in Colombia, like we've seen in Argentina, as I've mentioned, and many places in Africa that have been bankrupted by China as well, and the IMF, and they're one and the same these days. We are seeing a lot of people decentralize. We're seeing a lot of people go towards Bitcoin and gold and silver. And we're going to go into both here today. I do want to bring up the fact that, as it says in this CoinDesk article, crypto long and short, Bitcoin is more than a hedge against inflation. It's a hedge against crazy. Now, of course, we have the stock market, which is being pumped, and it's hugely bubbled. And people say Bitcoin is bubbled. 1% of the world owns cryptocurrency. I mean, it has a lot of room to grow. These stock markets are only for day trading, on the clock, massively pumped, totally bubbled. There's no reason for them to be where they are. Why is Twitter still growing when we see nothing new coming out of there other than them basically alienating 50% of the people that use it? Facebook isn't growing. People are leaving Facebook. We're seeing a huge surge towards alt tech, independent social medias like flote.app, flote.app, as well as, of course, BitChute, LBRY / Odysee. We are seeing a lot of movement in that direction. In fact, we even see Trump creating his own social media network that's supposed to be out in 3 or 4 months. I'm not sure what I think about that, but the fact of the matter is people are moving more towards decentralized technologies, which says a lot about how, even if they don't ideologically believe in things, for the sake of survival, people always decentralize. It doesn't have to be ideological. It's just survival. It's human nature. And so the stock market, if it crashes, we'll see Bitcoin go down probably quite a lot with that. But we also see the stock market being pumped with the US dollar, well, through bonds, and then that causes the dollar to devalue. And as the dollar devalues, Bitcoin goes up. So we have a double-edged sword here that could go either way. But with adoption, people are going to move more towards things like Bitcoin. We are currently witnessing a hedge that is unprecedented historically, and we are really seeing all the world's billionaires get into it because they could also see an advantage at doubling, tripling, quadrupling, 10xing their already huge amount of wealth, whereas these other markets that are being played with are still, even with the amount of fake money going into it, they are still not moving and as volatile as they want those markets to be. So with crazy, we see the toilet paper shortage, we see all that kind of stuff last year, and the coronavirus nonsense, and people are moving into Bitcoin. The crash of the stock market pulled it down in March of 2020. However, March is always usually a bearish month. And on top of that, we see the halvening happening last May. And this has been pushing a lot of eyes towards Bitcoin and Ethereum, Polkadot, and these other things, Cardano, etc. And so we're seeing this movement regardless of what the government's doing, regardless of what they're saying. For example, China trying to ban Bitcoin years ago, and just insane amounts of people went out and bought it because of the Barbara Streisand effect. They could try to outlaw it. The fact of the matter is, if the Chinese people are going against their government to get it, then the rest of the world will too. China is one of the most subservient countries in the world. So we're seeing a lot of Chinese money. We're seeing a lot of Japanese money as well. A huge amount of people in Japan and Korea are getting into cryptocurrency. And on top of that, we're seeing a huge amount of wealth going into Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies in North and South America. Unprecedented, like we've never seen before, and the use of stable coins as well, and these DeFi projects. So let's just look at what the market looks like at this moment. Okay, Bitcoin has fallen a little bit as I speak, but we seem to be in this perfect wedge where we are expecting a massive inflow of money into Bitcoin, in my opinion, in the month of April and into May. And I'm really excited about what we're seeing here, because we got kind of a breather moment. We saw it many times in 2017. We saw all this money flow into cryptocurrency, and it just blew up way too fast. And so people kind of just took a breather. We saw it go down a little bit and then trade sideways for a few weeks, even a month. We're almost on the exact same level we were a month ago in Bitcoin, which is healthy. When you see it go up 3x in like a week or two or 3 weeks, that's when it's like, okay, this is way overvalued. But right now, I believe it's heavily undervalued, and I am really excited to see where we're going into April. I'm extremely bullish on it, and these DeFi projects like Uniswap, SushiSwap, PancakeSwap are something I'm really looking closely at. I think that we are going to see a huge amount of people opt for the more decentralized exchanging and the more easy to use exchanges. I wish I saw more evidence of easy transactions from banks and credit cards into crypto, because a lot of people always ask, how do I buy it? It's actually quite easy, but explaining it to the average person who's never been in this, it's daunting, it's scary, and people could get scammed if they go to the wrong sites. So I'd like to see more projects really motivating people in that direction and not charging 10, 12, 15% fees. But I do want to bring up two projects that I'm really excited about. One is EddaSwap, EDDA, EddaSwap. Right now, it's ranked as 890th place of all cryptocurrencies. It's a token, it's on ERC, and it's something that I personally got involved in. So full disclosure, I'm excited about it because they are doing NFTs on the project. They have a huge amount of staking options, and people are able to possibly, in my opinion, not investment advice, make a decent amount of money off of it. Right now, it's taking a breather itself. It went up as high as 6,000 from about 1,100, and now it's sitting just around 3. So I'll pull up that chart there. That's basically the performance so far. I think it's basically a sleeping giant, and no one is really aware of this yet. So I wanted to bring it up. It's only got a market cap of $11.2 million. That's nothing in the crypto world. Absolutely nothing. There are transactions by the second like that in Bitcoin. Of course, you can't compare any of this stuff to Bitcoin, but these DeFi projects have a lot of possible clout down the line. The other one is TrustSwap. TrustSwap has been doing very well. Jeff Kirkdakis is behind TrustSwap, and I believe that this is another major sleeping giant. When I found it, it was at about 400th rank. It's now at 178th, and I think it has a lot more room to grow. You can see below, I'm going to bring this up as on the chart here. So a guy by the name of Sheldon Evans mentioned it earlier today, so it kind of shot up on it because of his YouTube channel. But we see the 90-day here. It was seriously around the end of January, 56 to 78 cents. And already it's all the way up at $4.09. And of course, the market cap is $270 million, so a lot of room to grow there. Now, a lot of you guys are going to say, well, screw crypto. What about gold and silver? Okay, a lot of you guys like the wealth insurance. The difference with cryptocurrencies and gold and silver are that, well, first of all, cryptocurrencies are far more decentralized in the sense that you cannot seize it. You cannot, unless you have the password, unless you're irresponsible with it, et cetera, et cetera. It's unconfiscatable. And also, it's important to mention that it could be both played as a wealth insurance, hedge against the dollar, as well as an investment. I've never seen gold and silver as an investment, and they're heavily, heavily, heavily manipulated. And gold and silver is obviously something that you can't easily transact with in the digital age as much as you can with cryptocurrencies, unless you have a crypto-backed or a gold-backed cryptocurrency. Like there are many out there. And of course, there's a LODE project, LODE, by David Morgan and other people that have been talking about that for quite a few years. But at the end of the day, we're going into a digital future. Either we go in a centralized, technocratic, scary, cashless Chinese style system based on social credit score, which is terrifying, or we can go in the decentralized way. So either we build on the thing that maybe some of you guys don't like, but you can build on it and make it so that it is for everyone and for individuals and tied to your pocket, not a bank account that the government tracks you everywhere with and stops you from being able to do things unless you get a vaccine, etc. Or yeah, you can have it in your pocket. I think that is really a far better option than the centralized method. And as I've said before, if your money's in the bank, it's not yours, it's a bank's. If your money's always going through the banks by digital transactions, legal tender laws, it's never your money, it's always a bank's, and you are essentially enslaved to the banking system and the government. And what they've been trying to do with these massive lockdowns, with these massive control mechanisms that have been arising from governments around the world, global governments, especially out of China, which has been propped up by the US since the 70s, especially. What they're trying to do is enslave humanity via digital technology and technocracy, so that basically it's the Internet of Things. We're tied down by the banking system. If we don't do things the government likes, we can't have a bank account, we can't have a job, we can't go shopping, we can't do anything, we can't travel. And if we don't get vaccinated, it's tied to our bank accounts, all that kind of crazy stuff. I believe this is a hedge against that. But okay, a lot of people like gold. Well, gold slumps to 9-month trough as yields dollar rally continues. But this is a good sign. So obviously gold has been sitting sideways for a while, but what we want to see with gold is that it keeps up just a little bit above the dollar, because right now we see, as this article mentions, that gold slumped to a 9-month trough because of the dollar rallying. The dollar rallying, the more value in the US dollar, the less value in gold in that sense, because as the dollar is doing well, gold doesn't do well. If the dollar is crashing and inflation is rising, like we mentioned, going back to the beginning here, then gold will do better. So what we've seen over the years is that gold has been an excellent hedge against inflation. Same with silver. The banks massively manipulate it. They've been holding it down like a beach ball underwater for years. But I do believe that as we see the dollar collapse, we will see gold and silver skyrocket. It's easier to manipulate gold and silver, however, due to the fact that we have about 50% in the hands of government worldwide. Though we did break a historic medium about 2 years ago with silver, about 50% ownership, private, public. So at least we're going more in the direction of private in that sense. And a lot of people have been getting into silver, especially with the Wall Street bet stuff. But the point is, we've seen Deutsche Bank, we've seen BNP Paribas, we've seen Scotiabank, we've seen all these massive banks around the world, JP Morgan, spoofing these markets to an extent that's just unforgivable. At the end of the day, though, I do believe that these markets will pick up dramatically as the dollar crashes. But again, it's not meant to be an investment. It's meant to be holding it under your mattress, whereas fiat currency under your mattress just loses value all the time. Gold has been miserable for almost 10 years, and so is silver. But with that said, I do believe that long term, it's an excellent way to hedge against inflation. Of course, we've been talking about this forever here at WAM. And I'll just pull it full screen here. We've been talking about this forever here at WAM, and it's of course been manipulated forever as we've been talking about it. I do believe that, like, we started talking about cryptocurrency, I think around $4 or $5. I heard about it at 7 cents. I thought about it at $1, and then it's just like, as it climbed, I'm like, wait a second, there's more to this. You can replace robber barons with a bunch of libertarians. That's awesome. Of course, the first information on decentralized cryptocurrencies originated on the Ron Paul forums. You can use a blockchain to enslave humanity. You could use that same blockchain, if decentralized, to overthrow that which enslaves humanity. And that's the important point to make with gold and silver. It's more something that you don't invest in, you just sit on it. So it's not as revolutionary, it's old school, and you're not going to be able to go on the street and shave down gold shards and sell it for food in most cases. You will in some places, but largely you won't. We're not going back in time. So that's why I believe we're going more towards a cryptocurrency, alternative, decentralized currency area in the next several years. And I believe in this next year, we are going to see something unbelievable in Bitcoin. People aren't even excited about it being around $55,000, $56,000 per Bitcoin. People aren't excited. You know why? Because we're nowhere near the overvaluation yet, in my opinion. What we saw in 2017, remember, a bull market starts where the last bull market ended. So at $20,000, it begun. So we've only gone up less than 3x at our all-time highs, just over 3x. In this bull market. And we don't just see it slowly go down and trade sideways and then fall 80%, 90%. That's not how that works. Maybe with some altcoins with low market caps, but otherwise that's not how that works. I believe we are going to see it likely still go up to about 250 to 300,000 in this bull run, and possibly more. And a lot of people are talking about 1 million. I don't want to overvalue anything ahead of time. So I'm just kind of sitting on something that feels more comfortable to me, 250, 300,000, 330,000, somewhere around there. So we'll see what happens. Of course, not investment advice. Like I said before, it's my opinion. You guys do whatever you want. Do your own due diligence. I'm not in control of what your actions are. But I think that this is going to be revolutionary. And as we see this inflation, as we see this poverty pouring in, as we see these lockdowns that have destroyed hundreds of millions of lives worldwide, I believe that there is some bright light at the end of the tunnel. It's just, let's not fall for the centralized cashless system. We should look into the decentralized cashless systems, which are based on utility of actually getting around the government. There's privacy coins like Monero as well. And these DeFi projects, like I said, EddaSwap, TrustSwap, these guys, I'm actually very, very excited for. And there's so many use cases that'll come out of it, as well as in the economy of, e-commerce. Shopping.io, a few people have mentioned it to me lately. I'm looking into that. And then, of course, there's things like Sushi Swap and Uniswap, where you can easily trade these things instead of getting onto like a hugely, insanely centralized online exchange that basically acts like a bank. That's not where I want to see things go. Anyway, I'll continue talking about this down the line. I'm really excited about all these projects, and I'm excited to see where it goes. Let's hope for the best. And also, like I mentioned before, we have NFTs that we're selling below. And I think both sides actually benefit greatly from this, us and the person that buys them. As long as we grow in value and demand, the token should grow in value and demand theoretically, which leads to you making more money off of you also helping fund World Alternative Media. So our Rarible link is below, and then we benefit from it going up in value because we get a small percentage, while you also get the percentage from it going up. So the value going up is beneficial to both sides. So you can check out our NFTs below. We have the WAM opening title, which of course has been infamous in thousands of videos at World Alternative Media. And anyway, hit that like button, share on social media, hit the notification bell. I'll be back with much more on this subject matter. We're on BitChute, we're on Odysee, we are on flote.app, flote.app. We're also on Rumble, we post there. And of course, we're on Twitter at World Alt Media. on Instagram at World Alternative Media. We appreciate all the help we can get at this point, my friends. We have a Bitcoin address below that you can use to donate to WAM. And there's also a Cointree link, which gives you a whole bunch of different cryptocurrencies you can donate in. We are also available to be funded through fiat, of course, inflationary fiat. On gogetfunding.com. We have Patreon, we got Subscribestar, we have a PayPal address below, and of course we have t-shirts at Teespring, link below. And finally, my friends, before I exhaust myself and everyone else with this whole thing, we have a newsletter, www.iamband.com. It takes 2 seconds to put your email in, and it helps us very much. So we appreciate you guys going there and just putting in your email. It costs nothing, it's not spammy, and it helps us reach you. So anyway, I appreciate it, everyone. Keep checking back for more videos. Again, hit that notification bell, and just check the links below. As this elapses, we will see unbelievable inflation, the likes of which we've never seen before. And unfortunately, we are going to see one of the most historical events monetarily in history. We will see a lot of people suffer from it. So I don't want you guys to be those people suffering. Let's make the wealthy, the people that understand the world around us, that understand the truths, understand how we're being enslaved, and understand how to live freely, disobey, live by example. That's always the most important point to make. Anyway, appreciate everyone. And until next time, this is Josh Sigurdson signing out from World Alternative Media. Find the truth, be the change.